Story 1. When I was a young man at the age of 16, my brother and I fought a lot. We would fight intensely with each other. My uncle passed away, and it was the first time I saw the toughest man I know cry. He sat my brother and me down and told us both we needed to end this and find some common ground and at least try to get along. It broke me. Here I am at 40, and my brother is my best friend. I don't know how I could do it without him. I just want to say thanks for the support. You folks made my day. What started as a moment of boredom, scrolling through my thoughts while sitting in my excavator and sharing my perspective, turned into a great day. Story 2. If you get yourself into the ditch, you have to get yourself out of the ditch. The more things you have, the more things you have to worry about. He was right. Story 3. When you're done having sex with a woman, bring her a warm, damp washcloth to clean herself up with. I was 14 and asked him how to get a girl at school to like me. This was not helpful advice for that scenario. Story 4. I talked a lot as a kid and I still do. My sister was complaining that I talked too much, that I even talked to strangers like I knew them, and it was weird. My dad told me never to stop talking to people, never stop making connections, because in the long run, connecting with others is all that matters. Story 5. When someone tells you they love you, don't take it at face value. Look at how they act and use that to judge, he said shortly before proving he didn't love me. Story 6. I want you to be with a man because you want to, not because you have to. I was struggling with college and hated going. The only reason I went was because my dad pushed me so hard to. My mom constantly told me to drop out and basically told me it was okay to be too dumb for college. Dad refused to let me quit though. He had 2 sisters who had stayed in abusive marriages because they were stay-at-home moms who had no education, little to no job experience, and no way out. He refused to let me end up like that and wanted me to be with someone because I loved them, rather than out of survival. Story 7. It's not my time yet, he said this while battling cancer. He's in remission now, and I'm proud of you. We both agreed I was a bit of a twat when I was younger, but I turned out all right. Story 8. Measure twice, cut once. It started as a woodworking principle in our basement or garage, but it has become something that I apply in everyday life. Any decision of great importance, I double-check myself. How significant is this decision? Will what I do need to be undone? Will it affect others? Measure twice. Story 9. It wasn't really what he said, it was what he did and how he did it. I was bullied in my freshman year in high school. For everything. When I would talk to my mom about it, she would just give me the standard, "Oh, ignore them," speech. But then my dad stepped in. And when I say stepped in, I mean he stormed in like a coach before the championship game. Every morning before school, he'd give me a speech so motivational that if a Rocky theme song had started playing in the background, it wouldn't have felt out of place. Every day, the pep talks escalated. By mid-year, my dad was basically my hype man. We'd be in the car and he'd be like, "Who runs this school?" And I'd be like, "Me." By sophomore year, I entered the building like I was a celebrity doing a surprise drop-in. Shoulders back, chin up, walked like I had theme music playing. I was serving main character energy. So, shout out to my dad for turning my freshman flop era into a sophomore level victory. Moral of the story? Never underestimate the power of a dedicated hype man. And if you ever find yourself doubting your confidence, just remember, somewhere out there, there's a dad telling his kid, "You are the Beyoncé of this school." And he's probably right. Story 10, grade 7. I had a bully that had been picking on me since arriving in middle school for grade 6. It was mostly just verbal assaults, which still hurt, but I could handle it. Well, one day in grade 7, he kept pushing me and asking me to fight him. Push, push, verbal assault. Push, push. I lost it and couldn't remain calm. I punched him in the stomach. He cried, and I felt really bad and started crying too. Anyway, my dad was the one who came down to the school to talk with me and the principal. The principal had his speech. Life is not a game. When we got home, Dad sat me down and said, "Forget what the principal said. Life is a game, and you have to have some fun while you're living it." That advice has stuck with me. Wherever I am or whatever I'm doing, I try to make it fun. Story 11. When I arrived on my first day of high school, I saw all these girls who were smoking and looking so good. I was intimidated. And he said, if they smoke, they have sex. Life lesson right there. Story 12. We were getting rid of all the doors in the house, and before he took my bedroom door, he handed me a hammer and said, have fun. I went through the door in the literal sense. It was quite fun. Story 13. Always be aware of your surroundings. He is a 4th-degree black belt in multiple Indonesian and Filipino arts, along with stick and knife fighting and Jeet Kune Do. Story 14. Don't blame another man for my sins. My dad was dying and was asking me to forgive him for falling short as a father when I was a little girl. He felt the reason I had walls up in my romantic relationships was due to his mistakes. Story 15. My dad is a terrible person. For years, our relationship was distant but friendly, mostly fueled by my own guilt to keep it going. About 9 years ago, I was in the middle of wedding planning and feeling stressed and guilty about whether to invite him and potentially letting him walk me down the aisle. In the middle of this, he called me 11 times back to back and left me 11 unhinged voicemails. I'm pretty sure he was on drugs. I don't remember exactly what he said in all of them, but the one that sticks in my head: you've always been the troublemaker of the family, and I respect that. At the time I was like, what is going on? Today I think it's hilarious. Those voicemails gave me the clarity to go no contact, including not inviting him to my wedding and having my wonderful stepdad walk me down the aisle instead, which is what I actually wanted all along. So I guess that day I truly was the troublemaker of the family, but only because he gave me the courage to claim my independence and cut him off. Story 16. He had just finished tearing apart our home in a drunken rage looking for his keys so he could go drive and get more liquor. I was sitting on my bed, crying. It was about 7. He grabbed my arms, shook me and said, you see this? This is happening because no one loves you enough to stop it. He was right. It never stopped. He died when I was 9, and my mom was an addict, so it just got worse. Things are better now, I suppose, but I legitimately can't remember anything else he said to me. Just that. He's dead. And the only thing I'll ever remember is that no one loves me. Story 17. Dad told me, be yourself, because you can do it better than anyone else, and anyone else you try to be like, they're already doing it. Thanks, Dad. I laughed at the time, but you were 100% correct. Story 18. Do not be afraid to fail, be afraid of not trying. It stuck with me because it made failure feel less like something to fear and more like part of the process. Story 19. He sat me down in the 10th grade and told me, I'm really proud of you. You've always gotten good grades and you haven't caused us trouble. If you want to go to college, you're going to have to get a scholarship. I only went to the 3rd grade. He helped me with my math in high school. And your mom didn't go to college. She went to trade school for sewing and could make a Vogue pattern from newspaper or paper bags. So we don't know how to help you do that. I would love to buy you a car, but we just can't afford that. I just wanted you to know that even though we can't afford to help you, we love you. This lit a fire under me to find out what it took to go to college and find scholarships. It meant everything that he told me this. Story 20. If my girlfriend's family asks, say I'm your uncle, not your dad. A family member on my father's side had passed away, and my father's girlfriend's family was going to be at the wake to show support. My father and his girlfriend lied about how many children and how many failed marriages he has. My siblings and I ignored him at the wake and have cut all ties with him since. Story 21. I lived with my dad throughout my 20s due to financial issues. My mom is a deeply mentally unwell and possibly personality disordered individual, and we no longer speak. While my dad and I were preparing to go our separate ways and move out of the house we shared, I had been having some relationship issues with my current partner. One day, I walked into the living room and found my dad crying over a stack of letters. They were old love letters from my mom. I just don't understand, he said. What happened to this person? Where did she go? I wish it could go back to the way it was in the beginning. I loved her so much. I wish she had gotten help. That was the moment I knew I had to get help too, because if I didn't, I would make my partner feel that way. Maybe I already was. It broke my heart to see my dad so upset. For the rest of the day, I just sat with him and listened to his stories of the past. It made me resolve to break the cycle in my own life, and I think I am on the way there now. Story 22. The best thing I have ever done was become your dad. He told me this last year. He is not my biological dad. My biological dad ran off when I was 2. He and my mom were friends and then boyfriend and girlfriend until I was about 9. He stayed in my life afterward. I even moved in with him at 15. Story 23. Day of my wedding. I was in my parents' hotel room getting ready. We were all ready to go and left the room. Walking down the hallway, my dad stopped, turned around, shook my hand like a man, and told me congratulations. I was not nervous at all until that moment, but I will never forget that. Story 24. You turned out to be a fine young man, and you love me too much. Goodbye, son. I love you. That night, he went into delirium, and we placed him in comfort care the next day. The last words he ever said to me. Story 25. I was in 4th or 5th grade, horrific looking, crooked teeth, wild hair that was always in knots, and my clothes were always dirty because my family was really poor and washing would hurt us more than help us at the time. I came home, stormed into my room sobbing because I had gotten bullied just for existing and looking the way I do. My father walked into my room and asked me why I was crying, and I explained that I was called ugly and poor and no one wanted to be my friend, and frankly it was getting old and I hated it. That man looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Girl, you are so silly to be my daughter and be so affected by something so small. Everything about how you look can always be changed or fixed. There are dentists, doctors, and so on. Pretty and rich people change themselves all the time. But inside, that's what no amount of money can fix. What does pretty do for you if you're dumb? What does pretty do for you if you're an awful person? You're an amazing person. You're so funny, so kind, so intelligent, and you'll realize that everyone in the room will want you or will want to be you when they get exposed to your soul. When we all die, no one will remember the carcass. They'll remember the experience of you. You be a good person, you do good, and you learn as much as you can to be a good resource for others, and you'll see. But also, baby, you're in your cocoon phase still, you'll be a butterfly much older. Don't pay any mind to bullies. Your dad's princess in this house, no matter what anyone thinks, and that's all that matters. In retrospect, I think it's hilarious that he mentioned altering your appearance if you're unhappy with it, but he wrapped it up by saying it won't matter anyway. To this day, I don't ever see anyone outside first, and I see everyone inside first. He set me up for good judgment of character, and he also helped me love myself on a deeper level. He passed when I was 18. I'm 31 now, and I will never forget that interaction. Story 26. My father told me, "If she's in trouble, she is trouble." This has never been more true throughout my life. I've always shied away from women who have extensive drama in their lives, and it's paid off. Thanks, Dad. Story 27. That no matter what happens, he is always there for me. To not be afraid of talking to him because I will never disappoint him, and he will be willing to help whenever things get difficult. Story 28. Taking a bit of a different spin on this one. I had recently moved out of my parents' house but still went to visit and do laundry. This was after university, so officially out of the house. This goes back to 2007. On Thursday of the long weekend in August, I was there for a visit. I was planning on coming back on Saturday to do a few loads of laundry. Before I left their house, I said to my dad, "Oh, I'll see you on Saturday." He corrected me and reminded me that he and my mom would be at the trailer, a cheap version of a cottage, and said to me, sort of laughing, "Well, I guess I'll just see you sometime then." The next afternoon, I received a call from a hospital about halfway between my parents' house and their trailer. They said it had to do with my dad but didn't specify. It wasn't too surprising for me as my dad was a type 1 diabetic, did have some health issues, and I had known him to have had hospital visits in the past for various things. Deep down, I knew what had happened. I arrived at the hospital and was directed to an office in the emergency wing. That's when I found out that my dad had passed. It has always stuck with me that our last words to each other were goodbye, with my dad's being open-ended as to when I would see him again. Story 29. After I finally got clean off drugs, After many times of trying, he was on the phone with me and said, "I can just tell you're over all that stuff," or something along those lines, and it just hit me in the feelings. He was always there to support me through all the addiction. And he was right. I'm 5 years clean as of now, and I still think of that very warmly. Story 30. When dealing with overthinking or anxiety, what is going on in your head is very rarely what is going on in the real world. I say it to myself when I need it, and it helps calm me down. Story 31. On a long road trip, my dad, brother, and I discussed relationships, which led to the birds and bees talk. I remember him saying, "When a woman says no, that means no, even when you're married." This made the whole idea of consent click in my mind at 13. Story 32. My dad talked about his 3 years in the Marines like it was the best time of his life. But when I told him I had talked to their recruiter right after high school, he said, "You don't like people telling you what to do. I don't think you should be in the military." It was one of the few times my dad actually gave me advice, so I took it. Lived at home till I was 29.